Hello and welcome to the Female Executive Survival Guide podcast. I'm Lauren Eyles, an executive coach and mentor with a ton of leadership and board experience to share. Leadership can be lonely, so I'm here to introduce you to amazing leaders so you can learn from us and get to where you want to be quicker. Welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about you live, you learn, how to make the most of life's experiences, both good and bad. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that this was recorded on the lands of the Awabakal people and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Life can be a roller coaster and no one's career journey is smooth. So through this podcast, I want to talk about the challenges that we can experience in our executive and personal lives so that you don't get knocked off course when they happen to you. We'll also be exploring how other women have navigated career and life hurdles to provide both ideas and inspiration. Today's guest is skilled at turning challenges into opportunities. As a successful entrepreneur, Holly Martin has built a marketing business from a team of 1 to 15. Holly is also a non-executive director and Senior Vice President of Business Hunter, the peak body for Australia's largest regional economy. We've enjoyed serving on that board together for the past 4 years and are still on it for another 2. I'm also lucky to call Holly my friend. So welcome, Holly.
Thanks so much for having me, Lauren.
So many things we could talk about. The first one I wanted to open with was something that women have told me their biggest challenge is: getting everything done. How do you juggle all the things?
Look, I think for me, the big thing is that if I have a commitment to do what I say I will, that then drives everything and all decisions that I make, because throughout my career, I think I've been floored by the number of senior people who I respect and they say that they're going to do something and then they don't. And to me, it then tells me something about them, which isn't necessarily all positive. And it can be that they don't respect me or they don't know how to prioritize. Like, it doesn't say something positive to me. And it makes me think a bit less of them because it means I can't trust their word. So for me, and this has been throughout my whole career, so for me, if I center that at what I'm doing in terms of trying to juggle everything, it helps me to get done the things that must be done, as opposed to the things that are shiny or easy or low-hanging fruit or the most recent thing to come in front of me. I still remember a conversation years ago and somebody made a comment about this executive that you needed to be the last person in the room with them, because whatever decision they make last or whatever thing you say to them last is the decision that they'll make. And so I'm really conscious of not just letting the recent stuff come in, but, really triage what I'm doing.
Before you became an entrepreneur, you had quite a big corporate and marketing career. Balancing work and life and all the things, how did you begin that entrepreneurial journey and what inspired you to go down that track?
It actually sounds really egotistical when I think about it, because I thought I could do it better. Which I know, but I feel like, 12 or 13 years down the track, that is a little bit of a naive reason to go into things, but I'm glad I did. I just felt like there were these big, and I call them like ad agencies, which are fantastic, but they're doing things at this end of the spectrum, the really big business, big production value, big ad spends. But there was this range of SME businesses who needed a marketing generalist who could give strategic advice and implementation to small business. And look, I still feel like that driving force is still quite the center of what we do, but the business now, years later, reflects that better, because not only can we give that advice, but we can implement it. Whereas at the start, when I was a one-person band, I think that there was limits to what I could do. And so, that situation of what was the inspiration for it, I don't even think I was thinking too far down the track. Like, it horrifies me now, but there was no business plan. There was no, there was no bigger picture. It very much was, I do a lot of networking, and so I still do, but I was meeting a lot of business people, and just the questions they were asking I felt was really basic, and I just couldn't understand why they didn't have access to those answers, and they really felt like they needed that solution. And like, that bit hasn't changed when I'm speaking to people about marketing.
I think that's actually the smartest way to go about things as an entrepreneur, to have a passion for something, curiosity, and about an idea and a gap that exists in the market, and to be really in tune with your customers and know where their pain points are and meet that need.
And I think the other thing is to be a bit gracious to yourself with the mistakes that you're making. And so, if you've never run a business before, you're going to make a heap of mistakes. I've never run a business before. This was the first business. I've done businesses since, but this was the first one. This is the baby. And my saying is definitely along the lines of, it's fine, we make mistakes, but can we just not make the same mistake twice? There are enough mistakes out there. Can we just learn from this? And, even internally, we have a chat thread called Lessons Learned, which is literally put in where there was an error, but what did you learn from it? So we can learn from it too.
So that real learning and entrepreneurial culture that you've nurtured.
Yeah, I'm very big on being transparent, and so that's not just from me, but definitely from me, but the whole team. It's, don't sweep things under the rug. What can we learn from this? I always say, all right, that's fine, 10 minutes of spiraling about this mistake, but then let's just get on with it and figure out where to go from here. Because I think I also firmly believe that you have to have that moment where you go, I cannot believe that mistake occurred, because we're all human, we're all going to make mistakes. You actually have to have that moment, but it's how long you stay in that moment that matters, and then what you do from there.
Absolutely. We've both worked in sort of the marketing comms area too, where you're dealing with crisis management and a lot of excited humans when things go wrong. And
I think that's a really good way to put it, excited humans.
Sometimes a bit more excitement than I'd like to be dealing with. But there's a phrase that I've used sometimes to reassure team members, that's nobody died. There are serious things that happen in the world where the stakes are incredibly high, and in business rarely is it that serious in the moment. Yeah,
we say we're not brain surgeons. Like, yes, what we do is important, but at the end of the day, what's more important is how we react to it, because that's the other thing I talk about, which is what is within our circle of influence, what can we actually have impact on, and let's not worry about the things that we can't. And so the mistake has already happened, so we actually can't change that. That has happened, but where to from here, I guess. And to be honest, I've not always been like that. So I always think when I say something like that, I sound so wise.
Well, you are wise, but I know what you mean, because some things, like you're talking about things and it's like on our best day, and I am very aware of the humanness that I have, and I'm kind of like, I don't always nail it. That's part of my ongoing leadership journey.
And I think it's important to also not try to not feel that, the regret that you didn't check something again, or the beat yourself up. Like, I do think you have to have that moment, because that's how you grow and learn, but it's the length of time that you do it. And I can look back, and definitely I used to think about it for in depth for days, and then it got less and less and less, and now I'm really good at having that moment and triaging it a little bit for myself. And then it doesn't mean I won't ever think about it again. I definitely do, but not just that level of depth, and really kicking yourself as well. I don't want to do that. I'll kick myself for a minute, and then you pick yourself back up and keep going.
Absolutely, and really important strength in an entrepreneur, where you're pioneering new ways and trying and testing different products and services, and bringing your team on that journey so that they're thinking in an entrepreneurial and growth way too.
100%, and I think that's that's probably been the biggest bit for me, is not to do it all yourself, and not to to be transparent about all of the things that you can be transparent about. I had some advice earlier on, which was around keeping more to yourself, and I followed that for a little while. But then when you're giving a directive, or you because the decision's been made, that is so different to, hey, thinking about doing this, here's the pros and cons, I'd really value your feedback. People will get on board with that, as opposed to just a directive. Sometimes there does need to just be a directive, but generally in business you can have those conversations, and I feel like you get so much more buy-in when you take people along the journey and you be transparent.
Absolutely. And people they're going to learn more, but they're also probably more likely to come to you before something is dropped, when they're a bit uncertain, because you've created that psychological safety, and you've reassured them that it's okay to talk things through and learn and grow together.
Definitely.
It takes a lot of courage to launch a business, I know that, and a lot of confidence to step forward. What was your inner journey like in making that step forward? How did you gather that confidence and courage to go out on your own?
I'm laughing at this because I just don't think there was any. Like I said, I didn't have a business plan. I just think I tricked myself, because I don't think I was definitely surrounded by a whole bunch of business owners and entrepreneurs, but I think the conversations I was having with them are very different to the conversations I have now. Now I pick everybody's brain that I come across, and back then the conversations largely were about marketing, and they were asking my questions, which then obviously led to the impetus for the business. But I just think I tricked myself, and I just thought, how hard could it be? Other people do it, how hard could it be? In retrospect, very hard.
We were made to do hard things.
Yes. And, there's been definitely, the word journey overused, but that journey of my perception of what being a business owner is, and what being a leader in a business that you own is in comparison to a business where you're an employee, all of those things has definitely changed. But I think it was just that thing of how hard can it be? So I thought I'll just give it a crack, and I honestly just thought to myself, I can always get another job. I can always go back and get a job as an employee, which I guess does have confidence in yourself to do that. But it felt like at the end of the day, even if I had to go and get a job somewhere else to get money that wasn't in my field, there's always a job out there. I could go back to my roots in retail and fast food if I needed to. And so that was at the back of my mind. That said, I do think that became a little bit of a self-limiting belief, where there was this midpoint where I realized I was still saying that to myself, and this was years in. And so I really needed to stop and say, actually, hang on a second. This is now grown beyond, I can just go back and get a job. And when I had that realization is actually, I think, when I became much more strategic about the business as well. So I had to let go of what led me and drove me to the early success in order to see the future success. And that's been a really good lesson too, is what works for you now isn't what's going to work for you all the time, and you do still need to question those things as well.
That's fantastic to hear about, because I haven't yet grown a business to that sort of midpoint where you've got employees and you're renting an office and you've got a healthy portfolio of clients. It's a really different career stage.
Yeah, and I think advice, it's really important to pick the brains of people. And I remember when I was trying to work out my hourly rate, I was basically looking at the hourly rate I made for a salary and adding $10 or $15 to it, which just shows how little I was thinking big picture, but also how little I understood about business from the inside. And this was all in the early days of planning, and having those conversations was fantastic, because somebody said to me, yep, that's fine, right now that's great for you. And look, my first business was called Just Holly, so self-limiting beliefs if I ever heard them, but also, okay, well, maybe I didn't need to have this certain hourly rate because I wasn't going to do all these things, but there was no opportunity to change my mind if I didn't start at an hourly rate where I should be. And so those conversations I think are really important as well, because that self-limiting belief was there because I'd never done this before. I'd never started a business. I didn't know what it involved. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I asked a lot of questions and I spoke to people that had gone the path before me.
The fast learner.
Yeah.
So
like learn as fast as possible, fail fast, learn fast, move on.
And I think that's part of this podcast is about sharing stories and journeys to help women access a bigger pool of information, because statistically the journeys that we've been on career-wise and the journeys we continue to go on are unusual. There's a lot of women that haven't reached that point yet or haven't had the opportunity. So what you're sharing today is so valuable to women who are thinking about going out on their own or on that journey and thinking, oh my goodness, is this feeling normal? And
yes, it definitely is.
And we all still have it, right? I normalise that for people with public speaking. I go, I still get really,
100%.
I feel really
Me
freaked
too.
out, but I just do it. I just prep and I just do it. And I know that fear and excitement's the same emotion and sensation in the body. So
correct. And prep, if you prep for it, that will balance out the nervousness for anything. And that's public speaking. When we do strategy sessions for clients, preparation's key.
Absolutely. So had you had role models around you in your social and family circles that had started successful businesses?
Nope, I had not. So yes, in a networking sense, definitely. But it wasn't something that I'd always aspired to do. And in fact, it literally came about because of the role I was in. I was working for an IT software company and I was in my second year in that role, and the first year had been great because they'd never had this role in-house before. So you can imagine there was so much to do, like setting everything up from scratch, getting it all underway. So that first year was great. It flew by. The second year was just dragging because doing everything the second, third, fourth time is a lot quicker and easier, and the scope wasn't there to do more for this business, because it was a relatively small software business. And I think that's where that thought process started, which was, well, why don't I just do this on the side a little bit, which I think is where a lot of businesses start. Why don't I just do this on the side? And so I scheduled a meeting with my manager and I said, you know how this job isn't really full-time anymore? And my manager looked at me, the owner of the business, and went, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm always hassling you because I want to do these new things and I want to do this, I want to do that. And it just wasn't what that business needed. They needed what I was doing. But for me, I'm quite a high octane person who likes to get a lot of things done, and I couldn't just sit in that seat. So after he got over the shock of what I was saying, I said, why don't I go to part-time? I want to start a business. And he was fine with that. Like, he went away and thought about it and came back to me. But that's probably more the courageous thing, was having that conversation, because I thought, I don't want him to just go, oh, well, we don't need you at all and off you go. So I was a bit worried I was shooting myself in the foot. But I think he actually really appreciated that I didn't want to take their money for a full-time job where I felt like there wasn't a full-time role there.
It's pretty impressive, especially as someone owning a small and medium enterprise, for an employer to come and say that and say, I want to support you, I want to deliver value for you, but you don't need me full time. Like, what a gift.
Like, looking back on it now, I think, I didn't realize what that gift was that I was offering, but because I could have very easily sat in that role, like very easily. But that's just not my approach to things. I want to get things done. I want to be achieving things. And so that's kind of what led there. But like I said, I wasn't thinking a decade down the track. I was thinking right here and now. And so perhaps if I was being a little bit more strategic about it, I would have asked some different questions. And what I love these days is when we work with startups who have this plan and this vision, because from a marketing perspective, it's much better if you go into it with that. So, for us, that's fantastic. But I also go, oh my gosh, I am just thrilled to bits that that's how you're approaching it, because I think you're going to see that growth a lot quicker because of the mindset that you're going into it with.
And I imagine that your purpose and direction of the business has grown and evolved over time, and you're probably working with a much bigger range of clients now. Can you talk a bit about the sort of work you do?
Yeah, so at the start, I would say that it was very much around the S in SME. And what's actually happened is, as this business has grown, so to have the clients. And I was only talking to the team the other day. We were tendering for a new client, and I was saying to them, this is actually one of the first times that I'm pinpointing that this is a turning point in the business. If we get this client, I can retrospectively look back and go and know all the clients that were turning points, like when we got our first national brand, when we got our first ASX listed company, all of those things, I can look back on it. And I think that that's that shift too, when you're looking forward and being more strategic, you're not just seeing things as lag indicators, you're seeing them as lead indicators. So the decisions I was making based on if we got that client were very much forward thinking, because I now understand the value of those clients, those turning point clients. And so every time we have a turning point client, something new, different, like it's a jump, not just in terms of like client hours and billables, it's a jump in terms of the way we do things and how we talk about ourselves in the market, and then what we offer to other clients as well. And so that's been really interesting to have that shift from lag indicator to lead indicator, which goes across a whole bunch of metrics, but particularly in terms of the types of clients we get. So it doesn't mean we don't do small businesses anymore. The way that we've structured it is so that we can really help across that spectrum, and it just depends on what we do. Like our bigger businesses, we might be just in charge of one area for them. For the smaller businesses, we're looking at the whole picture for them.
So sort of end-to-end versus specialty and product-based.
Yeah, because obviously now it's not just one person. We can offer a lot more specialties than one person. So it's very dependent on who the client is. But that's what's great, is we can help with that spectrum of clients, because I still want to be able to help the small businesses, which are the reason that I started the business. That's
so nice. That passion carries through. So I want to rewind to the year 2020.
Do we have to?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, when we were on the Business Hunter board, we were getting those economic projections that were pretty dire. We didn't know at the time if there'd be a vaccine. It was pretty dark, and I had quit my executive role to go back to uni and do my MBA, which I was still doing, but in the confines of this little study I have. So I remember having a few freak out moments. But in that time, you not only continued your business, but grew your business and your product offering, which is quite remarkable. How did you do that?
Again, probably in the worst way. I sound really negative with a lot of these things, but
tough on yourself.
Yes, correct. We grew fast. So at the start of COVID, we had 8 staff. And then so in 2020, and then in 2021, I think we'd gotten up to 18 staff at one stage. So that's too fast in retrospect. Yeah. And because what happened was, after a short period of decline, a few weeks where we lost a few clients and didn't gain any, like the sales funnel was empty. Like we were not getting any new leads, and the sales conversations we were having were just stopped, after that period where the government funding started coming through and people realized, okay, hang on, the world still turns, I still need to do business. I need marketing. Hello. So I need customers. So then we went into a steep and rapid growth period. So what this meant was we had to hire fast and frequently, which means you can't give people time to bed down a new team member before the next one starts. This can cause fatigue for your existing team. But the positive was, in that quiet period, and also due to government funding, I'd said, all right, let's see this as an opportunity. And so we'd really wanted to define our service offering more clearly, because we felt like there'd been a change that we weren't communicating clearly, which happens with a lot of businesses. You make a change internally, but you forget to tell, or you don't articulate it to the market or to your current customers or clients. And also I was like, okay, let's also use this as an opportunity to really bed down and tighten up operational factors, the way that we manage clients, our project management system, all of those things. So those things all took a little bit longer to do because then we were growing, but we still did those things as well. So I would say that entire, the middle of the COVID from 2020 to 2021 were growth in terms of client staff, but also improvements in operations, service delivery, and everything. But I guess the thing that got us through was we're a very, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but emotionally in tune business. We understand that we can't do anything, like clients aren't even our number one priority, our team are our number one priority, because without the team we can't do the things we need to do for clients. So that, I think, helps. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. Like I said, I personally feel that some of the decisions I made caused some change fatigue and some, workplace, I wouldn't even say burnout, that's probably too strong of a word, but some friction points. But because we're an open and transparent team, those things would come to the fore, hopefully a little bit quicker, and then we tried to deal with them as well. And not just, like I said, no sweeping under the rug.
Wow, what a journey, just on so many levels. And I hope that you've taken some time. I know you're very fast-paced still and still in growth, yes, but taken some time to sort of reflect on that journey and celebrate what you've achieved.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time beating myself up over the things that I thought we should have done in the first place or done better. But I definitely feel like in the last few years there's been more of the, like this, where we've done a good job, and it's a little bit that picture of the duck gliding across the water and the the legs underneath that are going 100 miles an hour. There's definitely been more reflection and celebration in the last few years, for sure, because those 2 years it was just do what you have to do and get it done, and it definitely was just putting out fires and the noisy squeaky wheel and all of those things. But the last few years have been much more about being able to feel like we're closing the loop on things and that we're being proactive rather than reactive. Much nicer feeling. Much nicer.
I think that you've done incredibly well in all the entrepreneurial stages, but I think that you're made for this mid-growth phase where you bring everything together.
I'm definitely enjoying this phase a lot more, because it does feel like it's all coming together, and like I keep saying, it doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means that foundationally the things that should be there are there. So now we're building on those strong foundations and continuing to build, as opposed to, it's such a basic thing, but do we even have the right project management system? So things like that, if you don't have that bit, if you don't even know if that's right, and that's like anything, if you can just make sure your foundations, you're solid in your decision of those foundations, then you can keep going from there.
I've learned so much. I feel like we know each other pretty well and we see each other regularly when we're talking business and doing board stuff, but I really enjoyed learning about your entrepreneurial journey, Holly, and have additional pride and respect in you and for you, learning about it. If one of the things I wanted to ask the female leaders I interview is, if you went back in time to your first senior leadership role and started again, is there anything you do differently?
Yes, I guess it's pinning down one thing, but I think it would be to realise that I was a leader earlier. I think I've come to understand that I do have some natural leadership tendencies, but I didn't really start to harness them until I was in an official, in quotation marks, management position. But as we know, being a leader isn't necessarily about being a manager. And in fact, I remember in one role I was in, and there was a member of the executive team who wasn't a great leader and therefore really struggled to get buy-in. So it's that piece of, if you're going to be a manager, if you start behaving like a leader before you even become a manager, you are going to just be streets ahead, because you are thinking, you're thinking bigger picture, you're thinking about being transparent, you're thinking about being somebody that people want to follow. Like, that's what a leader is. You can be a manager and not have anybody want to follow you. And in fact, I've come across a lot of those. So that bit, just, and I talk to my team about it all the time, that being a leader is not a title. And if you can be a leader from the start of your career will actually grow a lot quicker.
So true. I mean, it's in all the leadership textbooks too, that without followers you can't be a leader.
You can't be a leader.
You can have fancy titles, but if no one wants to work with you and follow you, then it's hard to get things done.
Yeah, because if people are, not stabbing you in the back, but are going to talk about your ideas or thoughts behind your back but not come to you, if people are going to say yes to your face but then just go slow walk the implementation of something, all of those things, which is that manager position, you're not going to be successful. So that, I think that piece of understanding that leadership is so intrinsic to good senior management roles, then you'll be way ahead of the game. I feel like I wasted all these years where I was again just thinking I was wanting to climb the ladder, which again I've talked to my team about this, that difference between, like, it doesn't have to be a ladder, it doesn't have to be from the bottom to the top in a straight line. It can be a lattice, like a growing plant that can go left and right and experience these things. If you can change your perspective from the ladder mindset, you'll be much more in charge of your career, and the people around you will notice too.
Absolutely. It can even be a bit of a jungle gym,
Yeah.
depending. And I think, I remember when after the pandemic, I went from working for myself to working for another organisation as a coach for about 18 months, I think it was, and I grew so much as a leader, going from the executive title through to being one of a team, a fantastic team, but walking alongside people. When I went back into an executive manager role, I didn't have to rely on the title, because I could build trust and respect genuinely and really understand and relate to people right across the country in a much better, deeper way than I could have without that experience.
I think I always used to think that leadership was the word lead, like you had to be at the front, but leadership, you can lead from the back as well. And when you realise that, again, that's that difference between directives and open and collaborative approaches to things. And I hope that I'm not always the smartest person in the room about every topic. And that goes for, in my team, on boards. Look, I want to be smart in certain areas, but I don't want to be the person who has to be the smartest at every topic, because I'm in the wrong room then.
Or we're not fully leveraging the talents of people around the table if we're not leading that environment where people are feeling that they can share, that their opinions valued, that they've had enough to work with to prepare and come to the meeting with ideas.
Yeah, and no bad ideas.
Yeah, totally.
Even if they're totally off the wall, you never know what might come from that.
You never know. It's a constantly changing world.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think it's an exciting time to be alive, because I think in the beginning of our careers, when social media wasn't around, we didn't have the breadth of examples of leadership and women doing interesting things in the world. It was books and magazines, which were great, but it's sort of, your view is limited. So the more that we get to know other people and those different styles, I think we've really learned that there are many different styles of leadership, as I've been learning the theory behind for the last 5 years.
Totally. And I believe that I am a bit hard on myself, saying I should have been a leader at the start of my career, because I didn't have access to podcasts and, I'm going to date myself, but when I started my career, the internet was not all that old. So there wasn't, a heap of stuff out there. And so really you had access to what was in front of you almost. And there just wasn't as much there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm right there with you. I can tell you when email came in, the internet came in. Remember the tone of the dial-up when we were studying, and it was like that. If your mum or dad was on the phone, you'd lose connection. I tell my nieces that, and they're like,
yep.
What?
And you had one phone, and everybody used that, and you'd ring your friend's house, and a parent would answer the phone, and you had to talk to a parent. So like that whole access to information, the circle was much smaller of what you had access to and what you could see, and you can't be what you can't see. And so, look, I think maybe it's gone a bit too far the other way. There's a lot of information out there, but situational. Pick the information in the moment that you're in or you want to be in next.
Absolutely, and be aware that those algorithms are going to feed you a lot of junk that might not be helpful and might not be taking you where you want to go.
Or you might end up in an echo chamber and you're just hearing the same advice said in different ways. I'm really conscious of the algorithms will continue to feed me what I participate in. And so I then have to go out of my way to make sure that I'm getting access to a wider range of information as well.
Yeah, so true. And if you were talking to a woman today who's just starting out as an executive, what advice would you have for her?
I really believe that find somebody who is ahead of you in their career journey, or better yet, multiple people, because this way you can create a circle of people around you who you trust, who have different strengths and perspectives for you to learn from. And people always ask me if I have a mentor, and the answer is no, not a mentor, because I have many, many unofficial mentors who I draw on. And that's actually been the way that it's been throughout my whole career, but particularly more since becoming more of in the executive space.
Oh, Holly, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed our chat and really value the perspective and the journey that you've shared, as I know our listeners will too. So everyone, I really hope you enjoyed this fantastic chat, whether you are on an entrepreneurial journey or thinking about doing it one day. I have a feeling that we're all going to be on this journey one day, that the nature of work is changing fundamentally. So these are incredible skills to be nurturing. So thank you everyone for joining me on the Female Executive Survival Guide podcast. If you were inspired by that conversation with Holly, please let me know. If you're enjoying the podcast, and I hope you are, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and please leave a review. And if you're looking for a coach or mentor to help you thrive at work, someone who's walked a similar journey before, you can find me at laureneyles.com.au. And you can find links for Holly and I in the show notes. Until next time.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was recorded on a Awabakal country on Australia's east coast. All advice is general in nature. If you liked this podcast, please like, rate and share. You can connect with me at laureneyles.com.au.